Hello and welcome. This is the September 2019 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Revenue Memo. I'm Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This video will cover Iowa net general fund revenue for the first 3 months of fiscal year 2020. I will also review the final general fund net revenue numbers for fiscal year 2019 and discuss how closing of fiscal year 19 impacts the current interpretation of fiscal year 2020. Cash fiscal year 2020 is off to a good start. Over the months of July, August, and September, Iowa net general fund revenue increased $69.9 million, or 3.5%, compared to the same 3 months last year. With the exception of individual income tax, all major sources of general fund revenue have contributed to the growth. Growth in individual income tax receipts is currently subject to the drag of an individual income tax rate reduction enacted in 2018 and effective January 1 of 2019. Let's now look at the just concluded fiscal year 2019. Iowa's fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30, and that period represents what can be referred to as the cash fiscal year. However, proper accounting dictates that revenue that is deposited and refund checks that are issued after June 30 that are the result of economic activity that occurred on or before June 30 must be credited to the previous fiscal year. The process of accruing accounting transactions back to the previous fiscal year ends September 30, and it is only after that date that we have the final net revenue picture for fiscal year 2019. Fiscal year 2019 general fund revenue, net of tax refunds, but not including transfer revenue, totaled $7.736 billion, an increase of $473 million, or 6.5%. This table summarized revenue growth by major revenue source. Note that for this table, revenue is adjusted for accruals and refunds are subtracted from gross receipts. This provides a true look at net revenue by major source on a fiscal year basis. For the fiscal year, individual income tax produced $202 million in net revenue growth. The fiscal year's individual income tax revenue was aided by a reduction in federal income taxes. Since Iowa law allows individual income tax payers to deduct 100% of federal income taxes from their Iowa taxable income, a federal tax reduction acts as an Iowa income tax increase. A reduction in Iowa income tax rates, effective January 1 of 2019, did slow income tax revenue growth over the second half of the fiscal year. Iowa enacted sales and use tax changes that generally became effective January 1 of 2019. While leaving tax rates the same, the changes expanded the sales and use tax base, and this expansion contributed to sales and use tax growth in the second half of the fiscal year. Federal corporate income taxes were also recently reduced, and Iowa allows entities subject to the Iowa corporate income tax to deduct 50% of federal taxes from their Iowa taxable income. This likely contributed to the significant fiscal year 19 corporate income tax revenue increase. The category of other taxes also contributed to fiscal year 19's strong revenue growth. The fiscal year witnessed growth in insurance premium tax, bank franchise tax, and the new water excise tax. This chart provides annual fiscal year net revenue growth for fiscal year 19 and the previous 17 years. To provide a clearer picture of the actual year-to-date general fund revenue change, transfer revenue is excluded. The chart shows that fiscal year 19's dollar growth of $473 million was a record for the period depicted. And on a percentage basis, the growth rate was the highest since fiscal year 2013. With the end of September and the close of fiscal year 19, it is now possible to look at the most recent 3 months on both a cash year and fiscal year basis, the latter being most important when considering the current state of 2020 revenue. To accomplish the task, I will present 4 tables that, when combined, provide an initial insight into where 2020 currently stands on a fiscal year basis. These 2 tables show cash year receipts and refunds for the months of July, August, and September, with last year's accrual period on the left and the current year, fiscal year 2020, on the right. Each table breaks down the revenue and refunds into the 2 fiscal years that make up those first 3 months of any fiscal year. This breakdown is the result of the revenue accrual process that occurs at the end of each fiscal year, combined with the process in place for determining which fiscal year to charge tax refunds against when those refunds are issued in July, August, and September. Looking at cash year 2019 on the left, you see gross revenue at the top, refunds in the middle, and net revenue at the bottom. The first two columns provide the fiscal year breakdown of cash receipts and refunds for those 3 months last year. The fiscal year 2018 three-month sum of $1.973 billion was divided into $578 million of fiscal year 18 net revenue and $1.395 billion of fiscal year 2019 net revenue. The table on the right does the same for July through September transactions this year, with the net revenue impact on fiscal year 19 of $582 million and the net impact on fiscal year 20 of $1.461 billion. The lower right-hand corner of the table on the right compares the cash year total columns of both tables and shows cash year 2020 net revenue is up about $70 million and 3.5%. The next two tables compare the fiscal year breakdowns from the previous two tables. The first table compares revenue and refund transactions that occurred after June 30, but were attributed in the accounting system to the just ended fiscal year. The table shows that revenue accrual adjustments contributed $19 million of growth to fiscal year 19. Higher tax refunds subtracted $15 million, leaving a net revenue impact of less than $5 million, a very modest 0.8% growth rate. This final table shows what happens to the $70 million of net revenue growth we have seen over the months of July through September once that amount is adjusted for $5 million of the growth credited back to fiscal year 19. While the $5 million subtracted results in $65 million of fiscal year growth, the year-to-date percentage growth for fiscal year 2020 expands to 4.7%. Gross revenue has contributed $94 million to fiscal year growth, while increased tax refunds subtracted $29 million. This analysis of the months of July through September shows that fiscal year 19 finished with very low net accrual growth, while 2020 has started strong. In summary, fiscal year 19 produced good revenue growth for the entire fiscal year, but ended on a slow note. The revenue slowdown at the end of fiscal year 19 can be traced to higher tax refunds issued this July and August, compared to those 2 months last year. The new fiscal year is up 3.5% on a cash basis and 4.7% on a fiscal year basis. The Revenue Estimating Conference will consider the final fiscal year 19 revenue numbers when producing new estimates for fiscal years 2020 and 2021 at the committee's next meeting scheduled for October 14th. I thank you for your time and your interest in Iowa General Fund revenue. Goodbye, and please check out the next monthly video memo in early November.